Welcome back here with us on Overdrive. Now, the Honda Elevate is the latest entrant in the highly competitive C SUV segment, which is generally ruled by the Hyundai Creta. So we decided to pit the Hyundai Creta against the Honda Elevate and also decided to add a dash of fun with the 1-liter turbo engine of the Volkswagen Taigun. Let's take a look.
If you have a 20 lakh budget to keep to but still want that full SUV experience, then the Hyundai Creta and the Honda Elevate with their naturally aspirated engines and CVT powertrains should be quite high on your list.
But if excitement and thrill is still high on your list of priorities, I believe this Volkswagen Taigun 1-liter turbo seems to have you covered better off. But which one of these is your best option?
The Hyundai Creta and Honda Elevate go the naturally aspirated route, both using 1.5-liter engines with CVTs. While the Volkswagen Taigun, still preserving its driver-focused theme, uses a 1-liter turbo paired with a torque converter. The Elevate is the most powerful here at 121 PS, while the Taigun has the most torque with the turbo at 178 Nm. It and the Creta make 115 PS, while the naturally aspirated Honda and Hyundai make a very similar 144 to 145 Nm. Now, driving these three cars together and with the Elevate, the first thing that you notice is just how much of it feels like an SUV. It's the most convincing in this regard, and that's mainly down to how you're seated. Now, you sit quite high up, the highest of the three cars here, it feels like at least. Now, with the Creta, the first thing that you notice is the refinement really is a step above the other two here, and you really do feel like you're in a car that may be a class above theirs. Now, where the Elevate scores is in its power outputs. Now, it has that 5 or 6 horsepower more than the Creta, but off the line, it's a bit more energetic. The Creta is a bit more subdued. You need to give it some revs before it picks up pace. But with the Honda, that's not the case. It's quite sprightly. So again, in stop-go situations, it makes it a bit easier to just maneuver. Which the Creta, you need to be a bit more aware of when the engine will really start to sort of kick in. It has a wide progressive build-up of performance. Now, the torque outputs between these two are quite similar, about 144-45 PS. So that's not much of a difference. It's how it's produced that is sort of causing this. So yeah, in middling traffic, say when you're moving along at speed, the Creta is a bit more energetic in that sense. But again, I have to say that the Elevate is the one with the better response. But here in these situations, it's the Creta that sort of picks up and goes more easily. But on occasion, when you have to rev out these engines, considering they don't make that much torque or power, but you will notice at the top end where you will go to sort of make an overtake, it becomes again quite energetic, quite sort of agile in terms of how it gives you that performance. But again, it's the Elevate in these conditions that sort of impresses. Now with the Volkswagen, again, it's a bit different. Like we've noticed with these VW Skoda 1-liter sort of cars, it has quite an aggressive crawl. So as soon as you let go of the brakes, it will sort of pick up speed quicker than the other two. But then you notice that it's a small displacement engine, and at that time it also makes itself quite apparent that it is a 3-cylinder, unlike the 4 cylinders here. So you have that rattle, you have that sort of a little bit of vibrations coming through, but I must say that over the course of this car's life, it has been improved compared to what we noticed when we first drove the Taigun. But once past that, it's again that quite typical VW Skoda experience. So you notice that you are riding this flat, linear, quite strong wave of torque, 178 Nm. Now that's not the over 200 that you get in the bigger engines, but here in this company, it's still quite a bit more than the other two. And that really does come into play. It doesn't rev as cleanly or as smoothly or even as sharply as the other two engines here, but it's effective. Now, complementing the Creta's quite refined powertrain and the way that sort of presents itself on the road is the way you just feel driving it. Now, it handles our roads the best of all the three cars here at whatever speed you might want to say. So even at low speeds, even though it still might not have that inherent sense of solidity like how the Taigun has, what it does is it manages to just isolate you from bumps. So you have that soft, smooth edge to the right, so you aren't exactly bothered by, say, even bigger potholes. Now with the Elevate, it's a bit different. What you get instead is a slightly firmer setup at any speeds. So even at higher speeds like this Taigun, it doesn't necessarily start to isolate you from bumps all that well. Although yeah, at low speeds it is a bit more apparent. Say over a broken stretch, you will notice that you're being moved around a bit more in the Elevate than in the other two. And as for the Taigun, it's a bit more of a familiar sort of experience. So it has that low speed firmness, very similar to the Elevate. So you do notice a bump when you go through one in the Taigun. But again, at higher speeds, it just evolves into that very strong, very stable, very solid experience. Taigun with this 1 litre motor, it has that nimble, agile, so you don't have that big DCT and 1.5 just weighing you down in the front. So it feels nimble, it feels really quite sharp and quite agile. You feel like you're driving a bigger hatchback, but in a very good way. And in that sense, the compactness of this car also comes into effect. So if you are looking for that engaging feel around bends, it holds its line the most. Yes, in terms of roll, this and the Elevate are very closely matched, but you just feel a bit more connected to the road in terms of driving in the Taigun.
It's time to head into our final break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, we'll tell you which mid-size SUV is worth your money. Welcome back here with us on Overdrive. Now, the customer's demands are above and beyond when they're buying an SUV, and of course they should be, because they want features, the tech, the space, and all of these are very crucial in their buying decision. The Honda Elevate, the Hyundai Creta, and also the Volkswagen Taigun address all of these aspects in a different way. Let's find out as we inch closer to the verdict.
In a segment full of cars that many call jacked up hatches, the Elevate styling is a fresh take. It is simple but effective, helped by the fact that it is the longest and tallest car here. The clean lighting and oversized grille give it that proper SUV stance, and the bodywork draws a fine line between feeling contemporary but not shouty. It's also got a smart rear, but we would have liked a full LED cluster in this comparison. The Creta is wider and has more immediate flash with the full width lighting motifs and oversized grille. This facelift continues to make the bodywork slightly disjointed, but the Creta draws back ground with the limited chrome and the sharp black panel for the rear lighting. The Taigun does look notably smaller in this midst, but like the Elevate, there's a sense this will continue to look smart for longer. Volkswagen has jacked up presence with the heavy chrome, but we prefer the more discreet look of some of the new GT variants better.
Now getting into the cabin of the Hyundai Creta, you immediately notice it's quite a welcoming cabin. You have this dual tone effect over here, it's light shade. The same is about the Taigun as well, it's a dual tone interior as well. Something that I really like that Hyundai does is the cabin itself is quite huge and the materials they have used around are quite nice, but the Taigun has slightly better materials, we've come to notice that. But something that we really appreciate about the Creta's cabin is these physical buttons to operate everything over here, which can't be said about the Taigun because that has touch sensitive buttons which on the move feel a little difficult to use. But overall the Creta's cabin feels quite big, even bigger than the Taigun, which is actually slightly narrower, so the cabin doesn't feel as extensive. And one thing that we really like is, while all three cars here have big windows, quite airy, the Creta is the only one to offer a full-size panoramic sunroof compared to the single pane on the other two. Now compared to the other two cars that we have here, where the Creta focuses on being premium and the Taigun on being sporty, Honda here with the Elevate has obviously gone for its famous trait of longevity, and that's quite obvious when you enter the cabin, where everything is where you expect it to be. The buttons are all very nice, all physical buttons. One thing that the Elevate does miss out on is ventilated seats, which is offered in both the other two cars. But the materials used across the whole cabin is quite nice. You get this nice tan leather seats. This tan is carried over here as well. This nice wooden panel over here, which really makes this feel like a more expensive car. Now when it comes to storage space, all three cars come with a wireless phone charger where you can easily tuck your phone away. The Taigun has the most amount of storage space, but this Honda Elevate comes in on a close second with decent amount of space here and a good amount of cup holders as well.
The Creta easily has the finest display out of the three cars here and is the only one to offer satellite navigation. But it is also the only one that does not support wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. So 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Since the Taigun's infotainment is slightly angled towards the driver, it is the easiest to use on the move and the graphics are almost as crisp as the Creta's. The Elevate's infotainment is a big step up from what we see in the city sedan, but it still doesn't feel as nice as the other two SUVs in terms of graphics, vibrancy and the overall layout. Even the physical buttons that sit under the screen aren't very visible.
As you might expect, the Creta is packed full of kit. The Elevate seems notably outgunned in this regard, especially considering that with this recent update, the Volkswagen Taigun has a strong feature set that isn't that far behind the Hyundai. The Elevate does give you ADAS, but again the Hyundai has a more effective advanced system that works better in situations where you might use it. The Taigun is still lacking this, which we hope is corrected soon. Now with the Taigun's dimensions, the backseat experience is slightly different from what you can expect from the Creta and Elevate. To start with, you have quite a bit of legroom. The figure 2651mm is very close to what the Elevate offers. So as you can see, I have a lot of place to just spread out. Yes, these railings for the seats sort of intrude a little bit, which doesn't happen in the Elevate. But aside from that, I really have space to stretch out. And that's the same with my headroom. It doesn't get a panoramic sunroof. The Creta is the only one with it. But that also means that space here has been scooped out. So in terms of that, there's no problem. I have a good deal of space. Now where the differences come is in the width. Now this car is about 100 mm give or take narrower than the other two cars here, and that really does show. So unlike the other two cars, the person in the middle seat will be a bit of a tight fit for them. Yes, the floor isn't too high, that's great. But yeah, this is, so you're just sat a bit forward. It's not a great place to be. But that also means that if you're just traveling 4 up, then it's actually a very comfortable space to spend time in. And that's mainly because of how these seats are contoured. As you'll see, they have these indents here on the seat back and even on the base. So they really do hold you in place. So longer journeys are especially comfortable in this car. You have just the right amount of back support. And even with these squabs, the way they extend it forward, there's a good deal of under thigh support as well.
So at 385 litres, the Taigun's boot is not that big. You have a slightly raised up floor, it's not a flat floor, so you have to carry stuff up, and the stretch is not that long enough to store stuff inside, but you can still put about 3 bags inside. Good enough for a road trip, but let me show you the Creta's. Now the Creta's boot is by far the most functional. It's a big opening, you have a flat floor, it's long, you can store stuff inside. It's about 433 litres, and you get some nice pockets on the side as well to store small stuff. But the biggest boot here is the Honda Elevate. It's more than 450 litres. The lip is slightly high, it's not a flat floor, but it's long enough. You can store stuff quite easily, very well for a 4-person road trip.
The Taigun and Creta give you 2 Type-C chargers at the back, and the Volkswagen is the only one with a 3rd headrest. The Honda has some neat pockets to store your phones, and despite not having a panoramic sunroof like the Creta, the large windows create an airy feel. Priced at Rs 19.73 lakh on road, the Honda Elevate notably undercuts the other two. This leaves little to choose between it and the Taigun, considering they both also drive very well. The Honda has more space, but we found the Taigun to have a slight edge with its premium feeling cabin and more feel-good features for the Rs 21.08 lakh that it charges. The Creta is the most expensive here at 22.36 lakh, but the comfortable driving experience, cohesive powertrain, smart cabin and vast features list continues to make it the segment benchmark.
Well, it's time to wrap up this week's episode of Overdrive, but remember, you can stay in touch with the team through our various social media platforms, and you can write to us on YouTube as well. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching. Drive and ride safe.